Well, as we recognize Filipino-American History Month, when you think of great boxers from the Philippines, the first name that pops up is Manny Paciquao, considered one of the greatest of all time, winning 8 division titles. But long before Paciquao, there was another Filipino fighter named Pancho Villa, who more than a century ago put Filipino boxers on the worldwide map before stepping into the ring for his final fight right here in the Bay Area. And this year, a new book about Pancho Villa was released by a college professor from San Francisco, whose work also contains rare boxing photos that one East Bay man has been collecting for years. When Joe Aquilizan is not in his backyard, teaching the sweet science,
I love the sport, man.
You may find him inside his Union City home, digging through artifacts in a simple wooden chest where he stores the knowledge of his Filipino culture and its connection to boxing.
For me, like I said, I'm a caretaker of these collections.
A collection of memorabilia and photos he has curated for more than 15 years.
To me, they're priceless.
Priceless images of a boxer named Francisco Pancho Villa Guilledo, who in September of 1922 knocked out Johnny Buff to win the American Flyweight Championship.
He kind of changed the boxing game. He introduced speed and power at the same time. Little guys should not be knocking out other fighters.
A little guy who then became a big global sensation. In this rare film footage, Pancho Villa is seen knocking out Welsh-born Jimmy Wilde in New York City,
knocking him out in the 7th round,
becoming the first Filipino to win the World Flyweight Title in June of 1923.
You could see him looking down at the fighter after he knocked him out, and he just kind of looking down at him. And you could see he's brown, looking down at this guy, and they really respected him. In the height of like racism back in 1920s, you know, this Asian guy came and showed the world that we matter, we're somebody.
He was 5'1", 112 pounds, and he seemed to have captured the imagination of this entire era.
Dr. Bernard Remollino,
a fighter's moniker,
an associate professor of Asian and Pacific American history at San Joaquin Delta College, was already working on his dissertation on the history of Filipino-American boxers, when one day he met Joe Aquilizan and got to see his collection.
I was geeking out a lot, right? I was really excited. I think my palms started getting sweaty.
Where they decided they needed to tell the story of this Filipino hero. And together, they wrote a book titled Pancho Villa, World Champion 1923.
It felt like we were driven by something greater than us.
It's our story, and I feel like it needs to be told.
Pancho Villa was a native of the Philippines.
We can think of Pancho Villa as this flashpoint. Winning of the Flyweight Championship in 1923 as a watershed moment in the history of sport, in the history of boxing, and Filipino-American history. And that speaks to sort of that cultural importance. And it speaks to the social impact that was having.
An impact that would eventually open the door for other great Filipino fighters, including the most famous boxer to come from the Philippines, Manny Paciquao.
I think he's greater than Manny Paciquao. But Manny Paciquao, to me, is probably the greatest fighter. But Pancho Villa opened that door so Manny can come in there. The first one's always the hardest one.
If we're looking at the long historical thread of how Filipinos show up in the popular imagination as viable fighters and as champions, Pancho Villa really ignited the imaginations.
And Jimmy Wilde falls flat on his face.
Imagination to reignite the Filipino-American community through the pages of Bernard's words.
Filipino-American history is American history.
And through a collection of Joe's photos.
It's just sitting in your chest. You know, you want to share this with a community where they can see it.
The story of Pancho Villa, World Champion 1923, written by the community.
Yeah, I wrote it for them. I wrote it for them first and foremost.
For the community.
And after defending his title several times, Pancho Villa's final fight was 100 years ago on July 4th, 1925. These are photos of the bout at the Old Oaks Park in Emeryville. Villa fought after having a bad tooth pulled and lost to Jimmy McLaren by decision. And during the following days, he developed a serious infection that sadly proved fatal, and Pancho Villa passed away 10 days later at the age of 24. And along with the book that was released this summer and an upcoming documentary, a large part of Joe's collection of Pancho Villa artifacts has been curated by the Smithsonian for an upcoming exhibit next month on the Filipino-American experience.